If you're trying to solve PTE fill in the blanks by translating every single word in your head, you're frankly just wasting your time. It's too slow. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to conquer this section. We're going to tackle two real exam style questions, and we're not going to do it by guessing. We're doing it by using a rock solid, foolproof system of grammar, collocations, and context. By the end of this explainer, you're going to be identifying the exact type of word you need in seconds. Let's get into it. Okay, so the absolute biggest mistake I see students make is looking at a blank and immediately just trying to jam a word in there based on some vague feeling of what might sound right. We are completely replacing that habit today. Instead, we're going to use a logical deduction framework. We'll actively analyze the clues around the blank, eliminate the wrong options instantly, and lock in the correct answer with absolute confidence. Alright, let's look at our first scientific research passage. Take a really quick scan of the pool of available options. Actually, go ahead and pause this explainer right now. Take a few seconds to try and solve this one yourself, and then we'll break it down together. Ready? Okay, when you get a question like this in the exam, your brain should immediately start categorizing these options into verbs, adjectives, and past participles. Now, let's zoom in on that very first blank. The sentence reads, "Scientific research rarely produces important discoveries through a single experiment. Instead, progress usually depends on a gradual process in which researchers blank one evidence from different studies." So stop and ask yourself, what action do researchers naturally perform with the noun evidence? Notice the comparison we have to make here. Looking at our options, both assemble and evaluate could technically fit the grammar. Researchers can assemble evidence, sure, and they can evaluate it. But look at what happens right after our blank. It says, compare competing explanations and test whether their findings. The paragraph is actually giving us a chronological sequence of research. First, you collect or bring together the data. You assemble it. Only then do you compare it. Choosing evaluate right at the start ruins that entire logical sequence. So, assemble is literally our only logical choice. Let's move to the next blank and see how this builds. We have and test whether their findings can be independently blank too. Look really closely at the phrasing right before that blank. Can be independently. This is a massive grammar clue. That structure dictates mathematically that the blank must be filled with a past participle. So, glancing back at our options, replicated, observed, and evaluate are our candidates. But evaluate isn't a past participle, so we cross it out immediately. Between replicated and observed, which one makes perfect sense in the context of scientific findings being independently tested? Well, this brilliantly illustrates the whole concept of replication. In science, if you publish a finding, other scientists have to be able to repeat it. Therefore, replicated is the absolute perfect scientific collocation here. Now, let's shift our focus heavily onto context for the third blank. The passage continues. This process is particularly important when scientists investigate complex systems because a result that appears convincing in one experiment may not be blank 3 under different conditions. We have a really clear contextual contrast happening here. Results that are convincing in one specific environment might not appear in another. So we've got withstand, observed, and distribute left. Let's apply our elimination framework purely based on the grammar immediately preceding the blank. May not be withstand. That is grammatically broken. To use that word, you'd have to say may not withstand, completely dropping the be. That instantly leaves us with observed. A result may not be observed under different conditions. It fits the grammar perfectly and it hits that contrasting meaning right on the head. We lock it in. Finally, let's finish off this passage. For this reason, researchers often repeat experiments and carefully document their methods so that other scientists can blank for the results. I want you to logically deduce this one with me. What do other scientists actually do when you hand them your documented methods and your final results? Contrast remaining options, evaluate, and distribute. Scientists don't document their incredibly complex methods just so their peers can act like mail carriers and hand out the results to people. No, they document them so their peers can carefully examine and judge the validity of that work. They evaluate the results. Evaluate is the only answer that makes any contextual sense here. Let's step back and look at the completed passage. Read through it alongside me. Notice how seamlessly the combined grammar, collocation, and meaning make the whole text flow. We didn't guess a single word on this. We proved exactly why each word was the only possible fit. Okay, let's step it up a notch. Here is a slightly harder clinical trials passage. Before we break down these options, pause the explainer again, read the full context, try to map out the story the author is telling, and lock in your guesses. Let's see how you do. Alright, let's focus on the first blank. Before a drug can be widely used, scientists must determine whether it is both effective and safe. Early laboratory studies may blank one promising results. We definitely need a verb here. What do early laboratory studies logically do with results? You might be really tempted by establish here, but look at the comparison. The very next clause says, but these findings do not necessarily mean that the treatment will work in humans, because the results aren't definitive yet. Establish, which means to firmly prove, is way too strong. Indicate, which simply means to suggest or show, is the mathematically better fit for this context. Moving on to the next sentence. Researchers therefore conduct carefully controlled trials in which participants are blank two into different groups. And guys, this brilliantly illustrates the sheer power of collocations. Participants are blanked into different groups. You don't compare into. You certainly don't reliable into. You are divided into. This is a fixed, unchangeable academic phrase. Identifying collocations like this instantly solves the blank without you needing to do some deep context dive. Let's keep the momentum going here. The researchers then blank 3 the outcomes of the groups to determine whether the treatment produces a meaningful difference. Highlight the action happening here. What do researchers logically do when looking at outcomes from two totally distinct experimental groups, like one with a treatment and one with a placebo? They compare them, right? Just emphasize compare the outcomes in your mind. This is another extremely high frequency academic collocation. You examine two or more things to identify differences. When you spot these exact word pairings, you save precious minutes on the exam. Now for the final sentence of this passage. Because medical research involves many variables, scientists must also consider whether unexpected results are blank for or simply caused by chance. Notice the stark contrast here. We are actively weighing results that happen randomly by chance against results that are solid and trustworthy. Notice how grammar makes this final choice completely foolproof. Our last likely options are reliable and emerge. Let's plug them in. Unexpected results are emerge. Yeah, that's grammatically broken. You can't pair are with the base verb emerge like that. Therefore, reliable, which is an adjective, is the absolute only mathematical fit for the word are. Take a look at the completed second passage. Just read it through. Early laboratory studies may indicate participants are divided. Researchers then compare. Results are reliable. Confirming that natural flow really reiterates how recognizing these grammatical patterns and collocations drastically speeds up your solving time. It leaves you with minutes to spare for the much harder sections of the reading test. Let's take a quick step back and formalize the practical techniques we just demonstrated into an official 5-step PTE strategy checklist. Step 1. Always read the words immediately before and after the blank. Step 2. Identify the grammar. Do you need a noun, a verb, an adjective? Step 3. Check for those natural academic collocations. Step 4. Check the overall meaning. Does it actually logically make sense? And step 5. Read the completed sentence again to confirm the flow. Now, I really want to warn you against the biggest trap in this entire exam: solving blanks in total isolation. You have to treat the paragraph as one connected story. The first sentence gives you the topic. The next one develops the idea. Then comes the consequence. And finally, you get the conclusion. If you understand the narrative arc of the passage, I promise you the individual blanks